It's funny, I don't use that same website. We have a nice internal system. I want to start off with a couple comments, and I'll open it up. Just want to recognize Mike O'Hara.
He's over here.
Oh, there he is. Yeah. Just, kind of reading here the last couple of days or a week or whenever it came out with you being, a nominee for the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame. I think that's a unbelievable thing that, everybody in this room, especially because you guys know Mike, but I think everybody out there that's listening and the fans that we have have to understand everything he's done for sports in this area. Obviously covering the Lions for 43 consecutive seasons. That's incredible. Being a Vietnam veteran, that's also, incredible. So I think we should get out the vote here. Everyone's listening, and get online and vote, because we want to see Mike get in the Detroit Sports Hall of Fame. So, Mike, good luck with that, okay?
I appreciate the Vietnam thing.
Yeah. No, thank you for your service. Thank you for what you do here. It means a lot to everybody in the organization. I'm sure all your colleagues here will say the same thing. So good luck with that. Couple comments to get started here. As always, it kind of falls in the same week the last couple of years. Have the players back in the building, so that's really good to get the energy with everybody this week back into the off-season program. The building gets a little lonely during the off-season just because it's us and the coaches and the support staff. So to have around 70 players or so here, it's a great energy to kind of bring back and kind of get the year brought off right. So it's good to see those guys. I want to go through my thank yous, which are long this year, just to my college scouting staff, led by Kyle O'Brien, Lance Newmark, David Sears. Those guys do an incredible job for me, for this organization. The life of a scout, especially the area scouts, they're on the road in hotels for like 150 nights a year. So it's a really important job. It's the lifeline of our organization, and I think it's kind of a job nobody knows a lot about. But those guys that are on the road all year long, looking for players, trying to gain information to help us make decisions on draft weekend, are really very critical. And I was one of those guys a long time ago, and I have a great deal of respect for each and every one of them. It's a really important job. So I think it's not only them, but it's their families. It's being away from home, being away from their kids and their wives and their family members. So just want to say thank you to all those guys. Also, I want to say, this process, is year long for us. We've evaluated close to, I think it's around 1,800 players to start. Kind of whittle it down to what our final board looks like. So it's a long, exhaustive process that takes everybody in this building. This is not about me. This is about our staff. This is about our coaches that get involved after the season. It's about our support staff that really helps me along the way. So this is really a group effort, the draft. And this is an important year, like it is every year, to get more players into this organization that can really help us win. So that's the bottom line. That's what our goal is next weekend, and we're looking forward to that. Just a couple things on the draft. This year, as always, it's a pretty well-rounded draft, I would say. Some positions are deeper than others. This was a record year in terms of juniors being granted eligibility. So I think there's about 45 additional juniors compared to last year. So put a little extra strain on our staff trying to get information on those guys in January when their names were released. But I feel like we're in a good spot with all those juniors, and just adds to the crop of players, because ultimately the juniors come out, they're usually the better players. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, but it just creates a little bit more volume, I'd say, at some positions that you have to kind of weed through and kind of finalize when you kind of get to the final meetings before the draft. Looking to improve our team in all facets, whether it's offense, defense, special teams. Really the final kind of piece of the puzzle when we're going through it is really, how much special teams value does this player have? Because ultimately in the later rounds, say the 4th through 7th and the rookie free agents, that's really how guys end up sticking on the team. They could be a really good receiver but have no special teams value, and you kind of look at it the other way, and if they have really good special teams value, then you know you're going to be able to get on the bus and go to the game and be on the 46-man roster. Then you kind of work it back there. So I'd say in the last 2 weeks, that's kind of taken up a lot of our time, kind of going through the special teams rankings from our scouts and our coaches. It's a really interesting process to kind of go back, because some of these players that you're evaluating haven't played special teams since, say, 2016. So you dig out some old tape, you make cut-up tapes. My staff does a great job, putting tapes together that show us what the guys can do or what they have previously done on special teams as younger players. So that's an important part of this process. Also, it's an interesting year with defensive players, I'd say. There's a lot of defensive players in this draft that might not fit the exact model of the size, speed, for each position, but I think when you watch their film, they're really good players. They might just be a little small for their respective positions. But this game nowadays in the NFL, it's a third down game. It's a sub game where nickel defense 75% of the time. So some of these guys that are a little bit smaller, you kind of have to kind of step away and say what can they do on third down and what they can do on nickel defense, since we're in it in so much. So I think it's an important thing to kind of always try to evolve as the league evolves. 15, 20 years ago, everybody in the league had a fullback. Now only 8 or 10 teams do. So every year, every group of years, things change within the league in sort of trends. So I think some of these players at different positions definitely have a role, and we spent a lot of time talking through those guys this year. So with that, I'll open up to questions.
Bob, you said you're open to trading down and would love the opportunity to get another pick. Just wondering, at the top of the draft, the very top, how much of those guys separated from maybe where you're picking number 8? Is there anybody, without naming names, that you would consider moving up the board for?
Yeah, there's a couple of players right at the top that you obviously would love to have. I just don't think I have enough ammunition to get up there, and I think, like I said previously, I'd rather move back a couple spots, if anything. So there's definitely good players at the top, at the very top. There's good players at 8 too, guys that we're excited about that, hopefully a couple of them are there and we can choose from a couple of them. But I think, I don't think I'm going to be in the business of moving up in this year's draft, but there are players that are worthy of that.
Would you say tight end and or receiver within the first couple of days would be a logical target?
I think everything's logical at this point. I think when the board kind of settles here the next couple of days and we look at it and when we're picking, I think any position's up for grabs. I think there's a lot of depth at those positions. So sometimes when you're looking at the board and there might be a couple guys you like at the top at pick a position, but there's a whole group of guys kind of in that next tier that are really good players and might be better values. Maybe that's something you have to look at in terms of maybe, hey, do you wait on that and you wait to the middle rounds to grab somebody? So this year I think there's a number of positions, I'd say especially on the defensive side of the board, that are good players that could come in and help immediately, but I don't think that you really need to take them super early. So we'll kind of see how it goes. I mean, you tell me who's on the board at 8 and I'll tell you who I'm going to pick.
There's always talk about quarterbacks every year. This year, obviously, no exception.
Yep.
How many of those guys do you think will go in the first 7 picks, and how does what happens with those guys maybe impact what you guys, what's there for you guys?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I don't know how many are going to go. I mean, my guess is probably at least 1. I think there probably could be 2. Haven't really dived into the team needs really in depth just yet. That's kind of like the next couple of days is kind of what you go into that, kind of study the other teams, go through the team needs book and kind of really evaluate from 1 to even below us to say 20 and kind of put up on our board like, here, this is what we think their top 3 needs are. Because it's really hard to predict just one need. So you kind of always put the top 3 up there so you can kind of have discussions about, well, if this guy is at, we're at pick 13 and there's somebody ahead of us that wants a player, you can always kind of look at their needs and say, all right, do I need to move back up and kind of leapfrog that team? So we'll kind of see how that goes.
This is a question about the juniors and all that's related to that. You've always, worked the bottom rungs pretty good in the undrafted free agents. So, with so many more, like you said, volume of juniors.
Yeah.
Does that mean the guys are like 6th, 7th, who played 4 and 5 years might be of a higher quality than other years because they've had more time in major programs when they get to the NFL? Yeah,
I think that it's going to be a trickle-down effect from the 45 additional juniors. Now, not all of them are going to get drafted. I think we actually looked at this last week. We looked at the entire list when it came out and kind of where we had guys ranked. And I think, unfortunately, the way college football is going, these players are getting bad information about how high they might go. So, and it's not the college's fault. I think it's, other people that are, family members, other influences in their career that are telling them, hey, go out early. So I think this year is going to be pretty interesting to sit back after the draft and kind of do the numbers and say how many juniors were picked in 2018 compared to how many juniors were picked in 2019. It's probably about the same number if I had to guess, but you're going to have X amount of guys that weren't drafted and now they're out of college eligibility, and now there's no AAF, so there's no other place to play. So where do these guys go? Where do those other 40 guys go? I'm not sure.
What do you think is maybe good, I don't know, say fail safe, but a protection or some type of rule to maybe curb that situation? Like, you think what the NBA does, where if you're not drafted, you can go back to college would work? Or is there something you think could work?
I think that probably could work. I don't want to stand on the table and say that that's something I'm behind. I would really have to probably delve into that a little bit more. It's a good question. I think it's something that at the league level and at the BCS level and even lower, because some of these guys are really small college guys that are good at their Division II level, say, but it really doesn't translate. So I think it's a bigger topic that needs more discussion, because there's going to be a lot of disappointment this year just because you just look at the pure numbers of what we're talking about. And I think that's going to be a little bit of an eye-opener for some of the colleges, because I know the coaches obviously want players to stay, right? I think the players have to get a real evaluation, and sometimes they don't believe the evaluation they get from the NFL, which I don't really get because we're part of that. So I think it's this should be an interesting year to see how that shakes out.
Talk about trading back maybe a couple spots. Is there like a range you're still trying to stay in, top 15 or something like that? Or are you open to maybe trade back to the 20s or something?
Yeah, it's a situation where it's hard to say right now, to be quite frank with you, because some teams in that, say, 13 to 15, they don't want to do anything. But you get an offer from 21 and it looks really good, and you're looking at the board and saying, all right, well, 21 to 8 to 21, that's 13 spots. There's 13 good players I like there. So you got to do quick math. You kind of look at your board and say, all right, I'm going to at least get that guy. And then you kind of just evaluate it there.
I'm curious how you feel the level of need at offensive line, especially at right guard.
Sure.
You lose TJ, got a couple of guys back, added somebody in free agency. But
Yep.
do you feel do you have a starter on this roster right now, or do you feel like that's a need you still have to address?
I think we have a number of guys that are going to go in there and compete for that. I think, the guys obviously just got back in the building this week. So I think those guys are really going to battle out in there. And listen, there's good depth on the offensive line in the draft too. So I think it's a position we've studied, really hard. I think our coaches, offensive line coaches, were out more this year than in previous years. So I think it's, we'll kind of see how that goes. But there's good depth at that position from the first round all the way down to, I'd say, the 5th and 6th round. So. In terms of the draft, or
the depth in the draft?
I'd say a little bit more on the interior. If I had to just picturing the board right now, probably a little bit more on the interior overall. But there's a number of players that we think can play two positions, whether it's guard to tackle, tackle to guard, center to guard. Which when you get down into drafting offensive linemen at whatever level, you look at their versatility. Like Frank last year, right? Played center, played guard for us last year. So position versatility from the offensive line is huge, as you guys know. We keep usually 8 or 9 on the 53-man roster and only 7 dress. So, you got to have versatility. So that's a huge part of our evaluation.
Bob, I wanted to follow up on the versatility question of offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot of analysts say, this tackle may be better suited for guard at the professional level. When you're looking at a guy that played mostly tackle or strictly tackle at the college level,
Yep.
What do you need to see from him that makes you think that they can make that smooth transition to the inside?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say you really, in college football, in most colleges, there's more passing than running. So you really have to hone in on, like, when you're watching tape, you can sort it however you want to sort it and maybe pick all the run plays, because there's usually only a quarter of them, right? Because the running game, the run blocking aspect of playing guard at this level is much different than run blocking playing tackle at the college level. So you really have to look at, pad level, playing strength, determination, toughness, And you have to project a little bit. You have to say, listen, I see the knee bend, okay? I see the explosive. You see the workout they have with the assistant coaches at the pro days. Are they explosive? Can they come out of their hips? There's all those things that we look at to really try to project inside. There's a number of those guys this year that, you look at the measurables and they might be an inch short for tackle and their arms might be a little bit short. And you look at them and they kind of look like a guard, but they've never played guard. But they played tackle at a very high level. So it's something that we've talked about, I'd say internally quite a bit this year. We actually brought up a name when I was in New England. I can't remember what year it was, the first couple of years, Matt Light from Purdue. He was a undersized tackle that a lot of people in the league kind of moved in and say, hey, he's going to be a great guard. We drafted him at left tackle in the second round, and he started for, 8, 9, 10 years at left tackle and was a pretty good player. So it's they come in all shapes and sizes. It's one of those things where you just got to take case by case and really study the individual attributes of that player to see if he can transition inside.
I'll go back to the trade talk for a quick sec, and we appreciate it, so don't get me wrong, but why are you so open about, your desire to trade down, I guess?
Open meaning?
Well, it's just, I don't know, are there a lot of teams that are looking to move down? Does it help you to get that message out publicly? Is there anything that...
No reason. No, just telling you how I feel, trying to be honest. If you don't want to be honest, I can go the other way.
No. I just didn't know if there was some benefit that, when you first said it, that all of a sudden your phone lit up a little bit more, or is there any...
My phone lights up a lot, trust me. I get a lot of text messages.
Bob, if there's a tight end available that you like at 8, how much do you have to factor in the whole Eric Ebron saga and how that kind of coincides with the fans and everything? Is that going to affect your decision?
Yeah. In all due respect to the fans out there, I can't take the fan sentiment into who I draft and who I sign for this team. And I wasn't the person that drafted Eric, so I think that's a completely two different conversations. So
this year, maybe more so in years past, with the roster you have, the moves you've made this offseason, you go into the draft a little more open. You don't have to force the board.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think it's. I've always said since the day I got here that the draft is a blend of need and best available. I think this year, just looking at our situation right now with what the board looks like and what our perceived needs are, probably a little bit more pushing towards the best available player. So I think that's a good thing. Now, things can change between now and September, but I think going into this year, we feel a little bit better about the depth at certain positions.
Is the fact that you've got a top 10 pick, and I assume you don't plan on having another one next year,
ever,
et cetera, ever. Yeah. Does that even nudge you more to best available in that sense that we need to take advantage of this?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. This is kind of uncharted territory for me, to be honest. I don't really love it, but it is what it is. And we're going to go out and get the best possible player for the Lions to help us win, whether that's whatever position it is. It's funny, my cousin texted me from Massachusetts and said, hey, I want you to take a long snapper again. I said, well, probably not, so.
Bob, what have you learned personally after going through this in charge for a couple of years now about everything that kind of goes? What's the number one thing that maybe sticks out about what you've learned from the draft the past couple of years?
Biggest thing I've learned, things change in a hurry. You can have your sights set on a certain player and somebody trades up and takes them. I've seen that from both sides of things. I think I've found over the years I'm more comfortable. Obviously, the more you work with people in a day by day, hour by hour, and long hours this time of year, you have a greater understanding of what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. And so then I try to fill in the gaps between that. I rely a lot on my staff, and now I've been with my staff for going into my 4th draft, so I feel really good about that portion of it. And I know exactly what everyone's role is, whether that's their role in June, training camp, during the season. Like, I know what everybody's doing, and I know they're doing it the way that I've kind of shown them how I want it done. So I feel better about that, because the more, you go to work for a newspaper, like, you don't know how to log into your email, right, for the first 2 days because the IT guy didn't tell you. So you try to figure it out. I feel like sometimes at this level, if you're a new scout into a organization and you don't know what kind of players the GM likes or the head coach likes, it takes a little while, So I think it's something that I found, really interesting to kind of see guys grow. So it's been really good. So I'm not sure if I answered your question or not.
Yeah, I guess following up on that, is there still a part of you though that's, everybody in this room has a mock draft and those types of things, playing GM and stuff. Do you still kind of get that giddy, like, all right, this is great, I'm building a team feeling?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, listen, I work all the time at this team. Like, this is what I do. I try to build this team each and every day, take a couple weeks off in the summer to spend with my family. But every day I think about, I don't know if it's the 90th guy or the first guy. There's something every day that I'm trying to get our team better. So yeah, I get excited. Yeah, absolutely. And I read everyone's mock draft, so just keep them coming.
Bob, how do you determine what's more important, production in college or the measurables? There's some guys who you obviously are better on the field than what they show at the combine, and vice versa, guys who thought were going to be great in college and weren't as great on the field, but their combine numbers are magnificent.
Yeah, great question. It's a balance. I would say I'm more in the production on the field side of things. But I think what happens is, you grade the players in the fall, right? Our scouts are out there. I'm watching tape. I'm going to practice. I'm going to games. You kind of have your board set in December. It changes quite a bit, the more opinions you get. But I'd say the thing you have to realize is you can't change your board after the combine, like, incredibly. If you have guys shooting up the board because he ran a fast 40, it's probably in the end not a good percentage of that. Now, some lowly rated guy that doesn't have good scouting reports that ran a fast 40, will we go back and do more work on him? Absolutely. Maybe we missed something. Because, listen, a scout that's at Arkansas Pine Bluff on October 2nd, maybe he was having a bad day. Maybe that guy wasn't at practice, so he didn't see his body type. And the 3 games that he watched that day, the guy had 4 catches. But the rest of the season, he lit it up and had 44 catches. So it's kind of what I'm trying to say here, a fail-safe to come back and say, all right, this guy tested really well. And that's what we do. February, March, we have a couple guys on my staff. That's all they do. They evaluate guys that test really well. And they say a couple guys rise a little bit. But I'd say over the course of the whole process, there's not a bunch of guys that just shoot to the top of the board.
Bob, as you said, you don't have much experience with a top 10 pick. Does that affect whether or not you want to trade it? Like, knowing, not having to deal or not deal? It's not mine.
Oh my God. That was it.
Not having a top 10 pick, on the market, so to speak. Does that affect your willingness to deal with, not knowing, you're not having done it before with a top 10 pick?
No, I mean, it's a top 10 pick, so, I mean, it is what it is. That's our pick this year.
You know the value of it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously know the value because you gotta. What you really have to balance is the pick at that time while you're on the clock, compared to who's on the board, and then what the offer is for that pick. And that's years of experience. That's looking at all the trade charts, which we use as a basis, but it's not a fail-safe. It's not, hey, the chart says you can't do that. Well, you can really do whatever you want. It's really kind of a baseline of like, hey, this makes sense. This is in a ballpark, because if there's nobody on the board we're in the top of the second round, there's nobody on the board that you like, and someone's going to give you a 1 next year, that's probably good business, right? Someone wants your used F-150 for 10 grand, you're probably going to sell it. So I think it's something that really you have to study. You have to kind of there's gut instinct involved here too, right? This isn't like you just plug it into your computer, into your matrix, and it spits out yes or no, you make that trade. It's taking everyone's information, talking to the key people that you rely on and making the best decision for the Lions at the end of the day. So.
Bob, just
last one, Mike.
Yeah, what have your conversations been like with staff over the last few weeks? And regardless of everything he's doing?
I've had a lot of conversations with Matt over the last couple of weeks. I would say that, my prayers and the organization's prayers are with him and his family and Kelly's situation. Out of respect for his, he kind of wants to keep everything private, so I'm going to kind of leave it at that. I don't want to avoid your question. I just want to, he's asked us to kind of keep everything private. So.
Do you have to account for his situation in the draft at all, just with your planning for the future? Is there anything that you have to take into account?
Nope.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Bob.